Hello, children of Evanston and some of our children from Grace Lutheran Church. I'm answering the call from Brother Dan Coyne. I think this is a great idea to read stories to one another during this time. So I'm going to read you all one of my absolute favorite stories from when I was a kid. Are you ready? I didn't hear you, but I hope you are ready. This is a story called Take It or Leave It by Osmond Molarsky. And you can see that when I was a kid, I stamped it with some kind of I don't know, looks like bones or something. Who knows what I was doing when I was a kid. So this was like absolutely one of my favorite stories. Take it or leave it. It's set in New York City where I was born. I was born in the South Bronx in New York City, so this book reflected a lot of my experience. Let's see what year it's from. Copyright 1971. Look at that. And I was born in 1970. It's for Peggy. And here we go. There. "I'll swap you," Chester said. Who did he say it to? It didn't matter. He said it to anybody who had something he wanted. And Chester always wanted what somebody else had. One day, Chester was standing in front of Firehouse number 23, playing with his yo-yo. Along came Walter, minding his own business, counting his baseball cards. 46, Walter was saying as he came up to Chester. "I'll swap you," Chester said. "Huh?" said Walter, looking up. "I'll swap you my yo-yo for your baseball cards," Chester said, flicking out the yo-yo and making it snap back with his hands smartly. "I don't want to swap," Walter said. "I got almost a full set. Only 4 more to go." "It's up to you," Chester said, flinging the yo-yo almost under Walter's nose and making him flinch. "I swapped an official Boy Scout knife for this yo-yo. It's made of real boxwood." "Real boxwood? What's that?" "It's what they make the best yo-yos out of." Chester said, "Take it or leave it." And he zoomed the yo-yo and zapped the soda bottle right off the ledge. "I'll take it," Walter said. Watching the yo-yo had made Walter woozy. Quick as a flash, the cards and the yo-yo changed hands. Chester had the cards, and Walter had the yo-yo. "So long," Chester said, fanning out the cards and starting down the street as Walter slipped the yo-yo cord over his finger and began to practice with it. Chester had not gone very far when he met Pendleton coming from the other direction on his skate scooter. "Where'd you get the skate scooter?" Chester asked. "Made it," said Pendleton. "Thought maybe you swapped something for it," Chester said. "No," Pendleton said. "Got almost a full set of baseball cards," Chester said. "How many you got to go?" "Only 4. "That's pretty good," said Pendleton. "You want to swap?" said Chester. "Swap what?" "Your skate scooter for my baseball cards." "Nah, this is a neat scooter." "These are neat cards," Chester said, and he fanned them out and also riffled them with a riffling noise. Pendleton's eyes bugged out as he watched Chester do things with the cards. He was getting confused. "I don't know," said Pendleton, admiring the skate scooter he had built himself. "Take it or leave it," said Chester, taking a step as if to walk away. "I'll take it," Pendleton said, and before he knew, he was holding the cards and watching Chester speed off on his skate scooter. Chester covered quite a few blocks of the city on his new homemade skate scooter, and he did it in a very short time. Luckily for him, there were no speed limits for skate scooters, and there were no laws against no-hand driving, sitting down, handstanding, or backward coasting on hills. Luckily, too, he knocked nobody down. He certainly gave more than one lady a terrible fright as he wove in and among the people on the sidewalk at the speed of zap. As Chester rolled up to the corner of 7th and Oak, he slowed down long enough to see Murdoch walking toward the park with a boomerang. "Hey, Murdoch, you want to swap?" "No," said Murdoch, who had known Chester for a long time. "I'm not going to swap my brand new boomerang for an old homemade skate scooter. You can save your breath." That's up to you, said Chester, weaving up the sidewalk and making a sharp U-turn and weaving back. This skate scooter may be homemade, but the skates are brand new. The footboard is 1-inch plywood, and the engine hood is a box that fresh rutabagas came in. Chester wasn't sure the rutabagas had come in the box, but he wasn't sure that they hadn't either. What are rutabagas? Said Murdoch. They're something like, well, artichokes, only bigger, said Chester. He wasn't sure they were like artichokes, but how could he be sure they weren't? What are artichokes? Said Murdoch. You're changing the subject, said Chester. What subject? You know what subject. Either you want the skate scooter or you don't want it. Take it or leave it. Chester waited a second and then started to scoot away, except that he made another sharp U-turn and ended up exactly where he had started, in front of Murdoch. I never saw a skate scooter make a U-turn like that, Murdoch said. And you never will again, Chester said. I'll take it, said Murdoch, handing over his brand new boomerang. For just one moment, Chester thought maybe he had made a bad swap. Well, he would see how well the boomerang worked before he decided. A block or two along, he came to a park. Finding a wide open space without too many trees around, he let fly with the boomerang, sidearm. Whoosh, look at that. Away it went, far and wide and high. Then back it wheeled and dropped at Chester's feet. Neat, thought Chester. A neat boomerang. And he threw it again. A lucky swap, he thought. He was pleased with the boomerang and with himself. Chester practiced with the boomerang until he could make it sail out and clip the leaves off the branch of the big tree at the far side of the clearing, and then sail back and drop at his feet. Chester had just thrown the boomerang for the 15th time when suddenly he noticed a boy watching him. The boy was leaning on the strangest contraption Chester had ever seen, a bicycle with only one wheel and no handlebars. What's that? Chester asked. A monocycle, the boy said. My father couldn't afford to buy me the other wheel. Chester could tell it was a joke the boy told every time he had the chance, so he didn't laugh. How do you ride it? He asked. The boy got on the seat, put his feet on the pedals, and started to ride around and around in circles. Chester remembered then that he had seen a bear ride one in a circus. If a bear could learn to do it, so could he, thought Chester. I'll swap you for this boomerang, he said. My pop would be mad if I swapped my monobike, the boy said. Your pop would be mad if you missed the chance to get this great boomerang for nothing but a measly one-wheeled bike. Let me try it out and see if I like it, the boy said. All right, said Chester. I'll hold your wheel. The boy, who happened to be a good pitcher, hurled the boomerang far out across the clearing. He watched it sail far, far out and then curve gracefully around and drop right at his feet. Neat, he said. I'll swap you. Chester, he was taken by surprise. He hadn't even had time to say take it or leave it before the boy had decided. It was almost too easy, but Chester knew a good swap when he saw one, so he said, I'll take it. Learning to ride the wheel was not so easy. It was twice as hard as riding a two-wheel bike. For one thing, there were no handlebars, only pedals. So no hands was the only way he could ride. It was half an hour before he could ride 3 feet in any direction without falling on his face or the seat of his pants. But all in good time, Chester learned to ride the one-wheeler. He could ride it forward, he could ride it backward, and in circles. The only thing he could not do was ride with his feet on the handlebars. So, full of daring, out of the park he pedaled, and down Tilden Avenue, arms folded on his chest, thinking that maybe if he had a bear suit, he could get a job in the circus. Kinda hot, though, inside a bear suit, Chester thought to himself. Just as he was deciding not to join a circus, he came to the Civic Center Plaza, where people were sitting about on the grass with their sandals off, and the pigeons were watching the seagulls paddle on the reflecting pool. There at the pool also were some boys and a girl watching something in the water. Chester saw it was a perfect model nuclear submarine, diving, cruising under the water, surfacing, then diving again. Ah, you see? There it is. Up and down the pool it cruised. There's the pool, leaving a trail of bubbles wherever it went. And all the girl who owned it had to do was turn it around when it came to the end of the pool. "What makes it go?" asked Chester. "Power capsules," said the girl. "You put one in and wet it, and the sub goes for up to half an hour." "Sensational," Chester said, and stood there leaning against his monobike, fascinated by the model submarine. If there was anything he ever wanted in his life, it was that model sub that ran for up to half an hour on a power capsule. How could he make a swap, especially with a girl? Obviously, back then, they did not have the right attitude about girls. Chester began to paddle up and down beside the reflecting pool. First on one side of the pool, then the other. There was a sign that said, "No bicycle riding," but that didn't bother Chester. He wasn't riding a bicycle. A bicycle had 2 wheels. By this time, Chester had learned to turn around and face backwards without even getting off the seat. This was enough to attract a lot of notice, and it was not long before all the kids who were watching the model nuclear sub turned to watch Chester. Even the girl, whose name turned out to be Susan, turned from her submarine to watch Chester ride. Now is the time to begin the swap, Chester thought, coming to a stop right in front of Susan. "Show off," Susan said. "You too can be a show off," Chester said. "How?" said Susan. "By learning to ride the wheel. I haven't got one." "That's the trouble," said Chester. "But I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll swap you my wheel for your submarine." "It has no handlebars," Susan said. "It doesn't need them," said Chester. "It has no headlight. It has no bell. It has no tool case." "It doesn't need a tool case. It never breaks down," Chester said. "It has no carrying rack," Susan complained. "Take it or leave it," said Chester, getting on the wheel and starting to pedal away. "I'll take it," shouted Susan, and Chester circled around, pedaled back, hopped off, took the power capsules, and dashed over to the reflecting pool. Just as the submarine came up to the edge where he could grab it, he watched it dive and cruise and surface, and then dive again, leaving a fine trail of bubbles wherever it went. Once a seagull thought it was a fish and picked it up, and Chester thought he was going to fly away with it. That would have been an end of swapping for that day, but the seagull realized that it was made of plastic and dropped it in disgust. Chester thought he would never get tired of the submarine. He could imagine sailing it in the bathtub at home, then coming back tomorrow and sailing it in the pool. Maybe he would never swap it. What do you think Chester should do? Looking up from his atomic submarine after its 27th cruise across the reflecting pool, Chester saw an astonishing sight. It was a boy bouncing along on a rubber ball. The ball had a kind of handle or pommel to hang onto the top of it like a western saddle so he wouldn't fall off. And the boy was bouncing around like a kangaroo. Chester was about to send his sub on another cruise. Instead, he took it out of the water and hurried over to where the boy was riding. The boy finally bounced to a stop, and a number of people went over to look. "What do you call it?" said a man. "Old paint," said the boy. "I don't mean its name," the man said. "What is it?" "It's a kangaroo buck and ball," the boy said. "You can see it on television." By this time, Chester had collected his wits. Walking up to the boy, he said, right out, "You want to swap?" He figured the best thing to do was to come right out and say it. He was holding the submarine behind him. "For what?" the boy said. Slowly, Chester brought the submarine out in front of him. "For this capsule-powered nuclear submarine that dives, cruises, and surfaces for up to half an hour on one power capsule. Advertised on the Captain Stardust show. It's sensational. Come on, I'll show you how it works." Bouncing along on his kangaroo bucking ball, the boy followed Chester to the reflecting pool. Chester put a fresh power capsule in the sub and released it in the pool. It performed perfectly, and Chester could see that he might very well have a deal, for the boy's eyes kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger as the sub dived and cruised and surfaced and dived again. "Pretty good," said the boy, getting off the ball. "What can you do with a ball like that in the bathtub?" Chester asked. "Not much," said the boy. "That's just the point," said Chester. "What do you say?" "I don't know," said the boy. The sub was just approaching the side of the pool. Chester grabbed it. Now was the time. "Take it or leave it," he said, and looked impatient, as if he were in a hurry to go home. Now, wait a second," said the boy. "I've got to go," said Chester. "Oh, I'll take it," said the boy. Woohoo! One leap and Chester was astride the ball and bounding away down the Civic Center plaza like a rodeo wrangler on a bronc. This was great, better than the skate scooter or the monobike, better than the pogo stick he had once gotten in a swap. This was the best swapping Chester had ever done. And if he ever did any more, he'd have to start with something else, not his kangaroo bucking ball. This was something he'd keep for his very own. Chester had just made up his mind about this when he saw a boy with a small black puppy on a string. The boy was jerking on the string and hitting the puppy with a stick. Chester bounded up to the boy. "Cut out hitting that puppy," Chester said. "I'll hit it if I want to. It belongs to me," the boy said. "It belongs to itself," said Chester. "Where did you get it?" "I swapped a roller skate for it," the boy said. Another swapper, thought Chester. The puppy was all black, except for one white foot. His hair was silky. His ears were floppy at the ends. His eyes were big, black, and shining. He looked miserable and afraid of the boy who had him. "What's his name?" said Chester. "I don't know," said the boy, yanking on the string and giving the puppy a whack on the back with his stick. "If I had him, I would name him Blackie," said Chester. He'd have given anything in the world, even the kangaroo bucking ball, to have the puppy, but he knew he couldn't keep him even if he brought him home. He had tried twice before, and his mother wouldn't let him. She said there was no room to keep a dog, and it was true. But he had to get the puppy away from the boy. No telling how mean the boy might be to the puppy if he got the chance. "Ever ride a kangaroo bucking ball?" Chester said, bounding up and down in one place. "No," said the boy. "You want to try?" Chester knew it was easy and fun right off. "Okay," said the boy. "Here, hold my dog." Chester took the string and held the dog. He threw the stick into the bushes. He kneeled down and petted the puppy, who was afraid of him at first, and then waggled up to him and licked his hand. Meanwhile, the boy straddled the ball, grabbed the handle, and bounded away. For a ride. He went so far that Chester thought he wasn't coming back, and that would have been just fine. Chester would have just kept the dog and considered it a swap. But the boy came bouncing back, stopped in front of Chester and the pup, and got off. Chester said, "You want to swap? I'll take your dog in a trade." "An old ball for a dog?" the boy said. "You think I'm crazy?" "It's just a mutt," said Chester. "Probably 6 different breeds all in one." "Well, why do you want it then?" said the boy. "I like mutts," said Chester. "So do I," said the boy. "I won't swap." He likes to be mean to mutts. That's what he means, thought Chester. Now, Chester was an old swapper. He was very experienced. So he always kept something very special in reserve for hard swaps. Just now, it was a Japanese yen, a piece of brass money with a hole in the middle of it. He kept it in a special bag that hung on a string around his neck. "Here's what I can do," Chester said, pulling the bag out of his shirt front. "I can throw in a lucky Japanese coin. What do you say?" The coin was not worth as much as an American penny, but being in the bag on a string around Chester's neck made it look very valuable. If he ever had to swap the yen, he would put something else in the bag to take its place for another hard swap. Chester put the yen inside the boy's hand and let him look at it. "Well," he said, boy had a look in his eye, as if he might ask for still something else. "I don't know," he said, giving a hard jerk on the puppy's string. "Take it or leave it," Chester said, and started to bounce away on the ball. "Just a minute," the boy said, picking up another stick. Chester stopped. "What else will you throw into the swap?" said the boy. "Nothing," said Chester, and he started to leave again. "I'll take it," said the boy. "Here, take the mutt." Chester did it. He saved the dog. And that is how Chester got a dog that he could not keep and would not have to. He would have to swap before he went home for supper, or take to the dog pound, and he didn't want to do that. "Come on, Blackie," he said. "I gotta swap you to some kid who likes you and who can keep you. I wish it was me." In the next hour, Blackie trotted along at Chester's heels while Chester tried to swap him for a baseball glove, for a bent hubcap, for a flashlight with a dead battery, for a kite with no string, for a roller skate, and for 4 sticks of chewing gum. The trouble was that 2 of the boys didn't know if they could keep Blackie or not, and Chester was sure they couldn't. Another boy looked just as mean as the one who had him in the first place. The one with the hubcap didn't think a dog was worth a hubcap, so Chester dropped the matter right there. And when it came to swapping Blackie for 4 sticks of chewing gum, well, Chester, he just couldn't do it. Maybe if it had been a whole pack, but a good swapper like Chester, he just couldn't bring himself to do it. "After all, Blackie, I did swap a fantastic kangaroo bucking ball for you," Chester said. "You wouldn't want me to give you away for 4 sticks of gum, now would you?" By this time, Chester was back in his old neighborhood. Yeah, he wished he could take Blackie home with him. Maybe at least he could swap him with some kid who lived nearby. Then he could go see him once in a while. Look who he meets. Do you remember him, Walter? Chester had not gotten very far past firehouse number 23 when who should he see but Walter with the yo-yo, the boy who had swapped the baseball cards for the yo-yo. Walter was working the yo-yo, but not very well. It would come up the end of the string, roll up a little way, and then run down again, and that would be about it. Walter just not have a way. He didn't have a way with yo-yos. "How you doing with the yo-yo?" Chester asked. "Not very great," said Walter. "I'd just as soon swap it back for the playing cards." "I haven't got him," said Chester. "I swapped him for a skate scooter." "Where's the skate scooter?" asked Walter. "Haven't got it. Swapped it for a boomerang." "Where's the boomerang?" "Swapped it for a monobike." "Where's the monobike?" "Swapped it for a submarine powered with a power capsule." "What did you swap the submarine for?" "A kangaroo bucking ball." "A what?" said Walter. "What's that?" One of those things. They're neat. Doesn't matter. I swapped it for Blackie here." "You sure did a lot of swapping today," said Walter. About average," said Chester. "Are you through swapping for the day?" asked Walter. He was kneeling down by Blackie, scratching him from behind the ears, and Blackie was licking his hand. "Why?" asked Chester. "Would you swap Blackie for this yo-yo?" Walter asked. "Would your mother let you have him?" "Yeah," said Walter. "Well, how do you know?" said Chester. "She said I could have a dog for my birthday," said Walter. "Tomorrow's my birthday. We were going to go to the pound tomorrow to pick one out. I picked Blackie right now, if you want to swap." Chester looked at the yo-yo, looking at it one way. Not a very good swap. A dog with as many breeds in him as Blackie was worth a dozen yo-yos. On the other hand, Blackie was worth nothing to Chester, because he couldn't keep him. "Take it or leave it," said Walter. "I'll take it," said Chester. He gave Blackie one last pat and handed him over. Walter gave him the yo-yo, and he put his finger through the loop in the cord. "Goodbye, Blackie," said Chester, and then he turned quickly and started toward his house, flicking the yo-yo out in all directions as he went. Tomorrow, he thought, it'd be another day. Well, everybody, I hope you enjoyed this story. One of my favorite stories of all time. Take it or leave it by Osmond Molarsky. A lot of wisdom there. I am thinking about all of you, praying for you, and I hope to see you again. We'll maybe do some more stories. So thanks again to Brother Dan Coyne for suggesting this. God bless you all. Good night.